The exploitation of crisis and shock has very consciously been used by radical free marketeers. And I start the book quoting Milton Friedman, where something he wrote in 1982, only a crisis, real or perceived, produces real change. And he was admitting that his ideas, his vision of a radical privatized world, couldn't be imposed in the absence of a crisis. He was referring to economic crises, and economic crises have played that role of sort of softening the ground for the imposition of shock therapy. The Asian economic crisis was a classic example. The so-called tequila crisis in Mexico was another one that unleashed a wave of privatizations in Mexico. But as people become more resistant and more aware of these strategies, and you see these mass mobilizations against the institutions that exploited shock, like the International Monetary Fund, then what starts to happen is the shocks need to get bigger in order for the disorientation to be greater. And that's where you have what I call disaster capitalism. What the Bush administration did after September 11th, when the war on terror was declared, is they essentially launched a new economy. Because the parameters of this economy were extraordinarily wide. This is an endless war, we were told. That the enemy could not be reasoned with, there could be no diplomacy, there could be no discussion, there could only be attack, and that it would not end until evil was defeated everywhere, right? So if you think of it as a business plan, it could hardly be more profitable, because basically what you're saying is you've got this new market, it's never going to end, and we have unlimited funds to finance this new market. So unlike a one-off war, what they were building was a permanent new part of the economy, a privatized security state. One other thing Milton Friedman said is that after the crisis hits, the kind of change will depend on the ideas that are lying around. And that's really what the University of Chicago Economics Department was producing all of those years, were ideas that would be lying around when the next crisis hit, being prepared for that crisis. And so it's not a question of we don't need some vast conspiracy to say, oh, that these crises are being deliberately planned and created so that they can be exploited. Now, certainly there are some cases of deliberate shocks that were then exploited. Like the book starts with the coup in Chile, which was obviously a planned attack that put a country into shock, and then was exploited for the sort of first classic case of economic shock therapy. The war in Iraq was, of course, planned as well, and planned to be as shocking as possible, called shock and awe, so that it could be exploited. But I think in most cases, it's not about planning the original shock. It's about being in an acute state of intellectual disaster preparedness, so that when the crisis hits, you're the ones who are ready with the ideas that are lying around. And so that's what happened when the levees broke, is that the Heritage Foundation was ready with their 32 free market solutions for Hurricane Katrina. And the first one was roll back labor standards. The next one was school vouchers instead of public school funding, and on and on. So they were ready to go. And it's easy to be ready when you have the same ideas no matter what the crisis is. Even